A mother who can see her baby daughter only once in a week, a husband who hasn't seen his wife in 20 months, and a foreign secretary who may have compounded their problems. The secretary in question is Britain's Boris Johnson. He's arrived in Iran hoping to win the release of Nazanin Ratcliffe, a British citizen of Iranian origin who has spent the last 18 months in Tehran's Evin prison. Her crime? She's accused of spying, which she denies. Johnson is hoping to win her release in time for Christmas. The worry is on Sunday, a Tehran court may enhance Mrs. Ratcliffe's sentence by 5 more years, all because of a blunder committed by none other than Mr. Johnson.
The UK government has no doubt that she was on holiday in Iran when she was arrested last year, and that was the sole purpose of her visit. My point was that I disagreed with the Iranian view that training journalists was a crime. Not that I wanted to lend any credence to Iranian allegations that Mrs. Ratcliffe had been engaged in such activity. I accept that my remarks could have been clearer in that respect, and I'm glad to provide this clarification.
Johnson is expected to voice British support for the 2015 nuclear deal, which the US is trying to derail. He's also likely to call for a political solution to the Yemen conflict. In addition, he will call for ending or limiting the Saudi-led blockade on Yemen's ports. With Iran reportedly backing the Shia Houthis in Yemen, his declaration may well be received. But will these intentions be good enough for the Iranians to release Mrs. Ratcliffe? That's not very clear. What is clear, though, is that Mrs. Ratcliffe is a pawn in a complex power struggle underway in Tehran. This has pitted the moderate President Rouhani against the powerful Iranian conservative establishment, which includes the judiciary and the Revolutionary Guard that have Supreme Leader Khamenei's backing. So what's exactly is it that President Rouhani wants? Well, he first of all, of course, wants to open Iran up to the world. He views the 2015 nuclear deal as a major achievement and wants Western sanctions on Tehran lifted. But the Revolutionary Guard has a different worldview. They see Iran's struggle against West Asia as an ideological one. Ergo, they're against any promise with the West, or rather compromise with the West. They were against the 2015 nuclear deal, which saw sanctions relaxed. The Guard reportedly benefited financially from those sanctions. The politics at play in Tehran are lost on Mrs. Ratcliffe's family, though, and friends back in London. All they want is to see her return.
So we are appealing as a community, not as the apparatus of state or anything sinister, but as a community of feeling, empathic human beings for clemency and mercy in this case. There is nothing to punish. She has done nothing. Let her come home to her family and let it be over for her.
Joining me this evening is WION's Bureau Chief in London, Mandy Clark. Mandy, hi. Is there a lot of pressure on Boris Johnson to sort of make amends for that gaffe that he made?
It's absolutely enormous amount of pressure on Boris Johnson. In many ways, his political future is very much tied up with securing the release of Nazanin Ratcliffe. Because of that blunder, there was all eyes on him. Boris Johnson has been seen as a bit of a bumbling foreign secretary just in the way he presents himself, and dropping huge gaffes like this one that could see her sentence extended. The Revolutionary Guard really took it as proof that she was committing acts of spying, which is what she's accused of, and it could extend her sentence. If that happens, it would be a terrible tragedy, not only for Nazanin, but it would be political suicide for Boris Johnson. So in many ways, getting her out is essential for his political future. He has lowered expectations that he will be able to bring her back on this trip, saying, you know, these types of cases are incredibly difficult to manage, but there is enormous amount of pressure. And right after that gaffe, we heard that Britain had provided £400 million to Iran that was held within the Iranian siege that happened in 1979. They said that had nothing to do with the case, but lots of people saw parallels to that.
Right. Mandy, if I can also ask, is he hoping in some ways to leverage the United Kingdom's very strong backing of the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran, and of course the fact that it has come out very categorically and rejected the Jerusalem decision by the United States as well?
Absolutely. Very much they will be backing their position as someone they could work with in the West, as an ally in the West. With President Trump's recent announcement of moving the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, the U.S. and Iran always had a difficult relationship, but it's only made it worse. So the UK will be pushing that. They will be someone, a voice of reason, someone they could talk to and reach out to the West and really trying to leverage that relationship as much as possible.
Is the British public worried, though, Mandy, that given Mr. Johnson's reputation, that he'd be the right person for the job, especially since there's such a delicate sort of political relationship within Iran itself between the Revolutionary Guard and, of course, the political establishment?
Well, there was a compelling article about the art of diplomacy by Nazanin Zaghari's husband, Mr. Ratcliffe, who is very tactful. And he was the one who said, right now, it was Boris Johnson who made the blunder. It's Boris Johnson who has to fix it. Yes, there's a worry that, he's not known for his soft diplomacy and that high depth tactical skills that's required for such negotiations. But the hope is really that he will pull it off, because many people just see a mother separated from a child, a family torn apart. And in Britain, they care little about the politics, and they just care about the family being together again, especially at such an important time like Christmas over here.
All right, stay with me, Mandy. WION's correspondent Maral Golampur is also joining us from Tehran for more on that story. Maral, good evening. How exactly is Iran viewing Mr. Johnson's visit?
Hello and good afternoon to you. Well, this afternoon I was on the streets trying to get people's ideas, and interestingly, the general public in Iran is not very informed about or interested in this story. Out of probably 50 people that I asked, only 5 were aware of Johnson's visit to Iran, and usually diplomatic disputes between Iran and Britain are highlighted in Iranian media, but in this story, media outlets in Iran have displayed tact and foresight in handling sensitive news related to this story. This piece of news and the information that followed was mostly followed up by minorities with certain political orientations or human rights and political activists in Iran. And on the other hand, we had this political campaign against Nazanin Zaghari, which has been gathering steam in Islamic Republic regime's media. Recently, a documentary was aired on Iran national TV outlining her background and her affiliations with British intelligence services.
And how serious are the charges, Maral, against Mrs. Zaghari Ratcliffe?
Well, she will be tried at the Islamic Revolutionary Court, also known as Revolutionary Tribunal, which is a special system of courts in Iran designed to try those suspected of crimes such as trying to overthrow the Islamic government. Her case is presented at Branch 15, and Branch 15 is the same court that Jason Rezaian, an Iranian-American journalist for the Washington Post, was tried at. He was also convicted of espionage in 2015. Interestingly enough, Rezaian was released in 2016 along with 3 other United States prisoners after United States delivered $400 million in frozen accounts to Iran. Another prominent figure tried at the same court was Dr. Ahmad Reza Jalili, an Iranian-born Swedish resident and expert in emergency disaster who was also arrested in 2016 in Tehran, and he was charged with providing information of 4 Iranian nuclear scientists who were assassinated in Iran by Mossad between 2000 and 2012. So as you see, this is not an isolated incident. There is a history of such retributions in Iran. And charges are pretty serious because she can be sentenced to up to 10 years in prison. And
right.
Also,
what leverage, though, Maral, do you see that the UK might have when it comes to this case? Can they press for an acquittal? Can they press for at least, let's say, less harsh of a sentence for Mrs. Ratcliffe?
Well, as you have mentioned, this issue has been entangled with Britain's historic debt to Iran. And the matter of Britain's debt to Iran was first linked to Zaghari's case by her husband, Richard Ratcliffe, who claimed last November that he believes that his wife is being used as a bargaining chip and his family has been caught up in a disagreement between the two countries over the £500 million that Britain owes to Iran. It has been also reported by British Foreign Office that Johnson is coming to Iran with a package of measures to ease relations with Iran, and that the settlement is a display of goodwill to improve relations with Iran. So you see, the whole package, it will, I think, in my opinion, it will depend on how it will go. But whether this initiative to settle debt to Iran by British government comes for trading a spy or saving career of a British diplomat after a gap, it is really regrettable that Britain needs to feel pressure to honor its international legal obligations towards Iran, and also for Iran, because it also needs to use this as a leverage to settle debt with the UK. But to a great extent, we will see how it will go during the negotiations.
Right. We'll keep track of that through both you, Maral, and Mandy Clark. Thanks very much for joining us this evening and bringing us up to speed on developments as far as Mrs. Zaghari Ratcliffe's case goes.